Have you ever just stopped and wondered, why do I react that way when I'm stressed out? Or, how did I even form this habit in the first place? Well, it all comes down to the fundamental programming of your mind. And today, we are going to explore the building blocks that literally make you, you.
Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Dr. Zach, and I am so excited to be kicking off our brand new series on psychiatry. For those of you who are with us for our respiratory module, we're making a pretty big leap, from the mechanics of how we breathe to the mechanics of how we think. And honestly, the best way to think about your mind is that it's running on some seriously complex code. So in this series, we're going to start learning how to read it.
So, first things first, let's talk about our very first building block, learning. I want you to think of this as the mind's programming language. Really, from the second we're born, our brains are just constantly firing, forming new connections, and basically writing these little behavioral scripts based on everything we experience.
Now, this programming happens in two pretty fundamental ways. On one hand, you've got classical conditioning. You've probably heard of Pavlov's dogs, right? That's learning by association. An involuntary response, like drooling, gets linked to a totally new trigger, like a bell. But then there's operant conditioning. This is different. This is all about consequences, and it's totally voluntary. It's how we learn to do more of the things that get us rewards and, well, avoid the stuff that gets us punished.
Okay, let's zoom in on operant conditioning, because it is everywhere. It really boils down to just two levers you can pull: reinforcement, which makes a behavior happen more often, and punishment, which makes it happen less often. But here is the absolute key, and you gotta remember this. Positive and negative here do not mean good or bad. Nope. Positive just means you're adding something, and negative means you're taking something away. Let's see what that actually looks like.
This chart breaks it down perfectly. So, positive reinforcement, you're adding something good like giving praise when a kid cleans their room. Easy enough. Negative reinforcement, this is where people get tripped up. You're taking away something bad. Think about your car's annoying beeping sound. It stops when you finally buckle your seatbelt. That's negative reinforcement. Now, on the other side, positive punishment adds something bad, like getting a speeding ticket. And finally, negative punishment takes away something good, like grounding a teenager and taking their phone. This simple little box right here, it shapes so much of what we do every single day.
All right, let's move to our next building block. So if learning is the code that our mind runs on, then ego defenses are kind of like the mind's pre-installed software programs. They run automatically in the background to protect us, to manage stress, and to keep really difficult feelings from overwhelming the system. So what are they, really? Ego defenses are all those thoughts and behaviors, sometimes we're aware of them, sometimes we're not, that we use to handle internal conflicts and, frankly, to shield ourselves from feeling things like anxiety or depression. And let's be clear, everybody uses these. They are a fundamental part of our psychological toolkit. Let's look at a super common one, displacement. I guarantee we have all felt this. It's when you take a really powerful emotion, like anger, and instead of aiming it at the person or thing that caused it, you redirect it onto a safer, less threatening target. Right, here's a perfect example. A teacher gets chewed out by their principal. Now, they can't exactly yell back at their boss, right? So that frustration gets bottled up, and then it gets unconsciously shifted or displaced onto an easier target. So they go home and criticize their spouse's cooking. It's not fair, for sure, but it's a classic way our minds try to cope. Okay, here's another defense mechanism you'll definitely recognize. Idealization. This is that tendency we have to put someone, or sometimes even ourselves, on this giant pedestal. We see them as absolutely perfect by focusing only on the good stuff and just completely ignoring any flaws. You see this all the time in new relationships, maybe with celebrities or, like in this example, with a patient and their doctor. By focusing only on how great and accomplished the doctor is, the patient avoids the anxiety or maybe the disappointment that would come with seeing them as just a regular, complex human being. Now, it's really important to know that not all defenses are created equal. Some are way more helpful than others.
This slide gives a great comparison between an immature defense, like denial, and a much more mature one, like sublimation. So denial is pretty straightforward. You're just flat out refusing to accept a painful reality. But sublimation, that's a much more constructive way to deal. You take an impulse that's maybe not so acceptable, and you channel it into something that is socially acceptable and often really productive. That classic example of an aggressive teenager who becomes a star football player? Yep, that's sublimation in action. And there are other really mature, adaptive ways our minds cope. Things like altruism, where we feel better by helping other people. Or suppression, which is the conscious choice to put a worry on the back burner so you can deal with it later when you're ready. And of course, one of my favorites, humor. It lets us look at uncomfortable feelings without getting totally overwhelmed. These are the sophisticated tools of a really resilient mind.
So we have our basic programming and our coping software. But where is the foundation for all of this stuff built? Well, that brings us to our final and maybe most important building block: child development. Everything we've talked about is built on top of the journey we all take right from the very beginning. This timeline just gives you a bird's eye view of the absolute explosion of growth that happens in early childhood. It's incredible. In just the first year, an infant goes from having only basic reflexes to feeling separation anxiety. Then come the toddler years, and language just blossoms. And by the time they're in preschool, they're engaging in complex social stuff like cooperative play. The pace of change is just staggering. Let's just zoom in for a second on the toddler stage. You can see these key milestones happening all at once across different domains. You've got motor skills, like climbing stairs. You have social developments, like that classic toddler move of running away from a parent and then immediately running right back. That's a process called rapprochement. And then, of course, that cognitive leap, from just a handful of words to hundreds. Every single one of these milestones is another brick being laid in the mind's foundation. So, let's take a breath. We've looked at how our minds get programmed, how they protect themselves, and the developmental foundation they're all built on. These aren't just abstract ideas in a textbook. These are the actual tools inside your own mental toolkit. So let's just put it all together one more time. Our minds are really built in layers. At the bottom, you've got the programming, the learning we do through conditioning, association, rewards. Running on top of that is our protective software, all those coping mechanisms that manage our stress. And all of it rests on a biological foundation that started growing from the moment we were born. Learning, coping, and growing. Those are the building blocks.
At the end of the day, understanding these building blocks is really about understanding ourselves. It's like someone hands you the blueprint for your own mind. So I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. Which of these mental tools, these defense mechanisms, these learning patterns, do you see show up most often in your own life? I hope you'll join us next time as we build on this foundation and start to explore the fascinating world of psychiatric disorders. See you then.